Welcome to the Ray Carr Show. Our very special guest, the legendary Petula Clark. Petula, welcome to the Ray Carr Show.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you. I'm delighted to be able to talk to you. What do you want to talk about?
Well, we're going to talk about let's talk about your illustrious career, and it all began back in the BBC, or actually in Wales, right?
Well, yes. You see, I mean, this is a long story. This is going way back. You know, I'm part Welsh. My mother was Welsh, and they're very musical people. And I spent a lot of my childhood in Wales when I wasn't in just outside London, which was where we lived. Which was, you know, being bombed during the Second World War. So my life was sort of between Wales and London, and it was in Wales where I first started singing in chapel, actually. And I was a very small child, but I always loved music. And then you're quite right, of course, my big break, I suppose, came with the BBC radio, good old-fashioned radio.
That's right, radio, our good friend.
And I sang for the Forces. I was the Forces' little mascot, really, I suppose, and that started my big career.
Petula, now also, according to my records, you did some impersonations of some very famous radio stars and singers at that time, like Vera Lynn, Carmen Miranda, and Sophie Tucker. Is that true?
I know it sounds a bit strange, but yeah, well, you know, I like to do comedy. I was always, you know, there were two little girls who were quite famous at that time. One was me, and the other one was Julie Andrews. And she started very young too. She was a much more serious little girl. You know, she sang semi-classical songs, and it was all very straight. And I was more like the sort of, I sort of sang swing and jazz and did comedy things. So, you know, I was more of a kind of, you know, a bit of a character, you know.
But you had fun with it.
Well, of course, I loved it. I mean, I was actually basically very shy. So, but when I went on stage and I saw that people kind of enjoyed hearing me sing and I could make people laugh, that made me feel less sort of intimidated about things in general.
Did you enjoy actually singing or just performing in general more? What do you prefer?
Oh, I love to sing. I mean, it would be hard to imagine my life without music in general, you know. I've always got some kind of music going through my head. I also write. But, you know, I like to act, too. You know, I've done a fair amount of that.
Oh, you have, yes. You've done a number of great movies.
Yes, but I also, Ray, I did some theater, what we call straight theater, you know, without music, and I enjoyed that too. I like working with other actors, as well as doing my own sort of one-woman show.
What was that like? Tell me a little bit about the one-woman show.
Oh, well, I still do it. I mean, that's pretty well what I do, you know, when I do concerts. And, you know, I did a tour last year of the UK and another one of Australia last year. And I'm doing some more in France. So, yeah, I love doing that because it means that I can do pretty well what I want to do. You know, I have like a 2.5-hour show. I have usually a great bunch of musicians, great sound system, great audience. I mean, what else do you want?
Right, it's got everything you need.
Yes, and I just choose what I want to sing. So it's like a party for me.
That's fantastic. And, you know, the great thing is you've been doing entertainment for a very long time, and you're still great at it, and you still enjoy it.
Oh, yes. I mean, I wouldn't do it, Ray, if I didn't enjoy it. It's also part of my system, if you like. You know, I started so young. It doesn't feel like a job to me. It feels like, you know, the natural thing for me to do. I probably feel more at ease on stage than I do talking to you, for instance.
Wow. Tell me a little bit about Petula, if you may, or if you will here. Your first big break coming out of the late 50s, what was the thing that really catapulted you to superstardom that you feel in England?
You know, it's almost like talking about somebody else because, you know, I had that career, I had my English career, as a child and a teenager. And then, I got married to a Frenchman and went to live in France and had another career. I became France's favorite singer. And then, of course, Downtown came along, and that was another career. So exactly what catapulted me to fame?
Do you think it was specifically Downtown? Do you think that was the crowning moment of the career back in the 60s?
Well, it was a very important moment, yes. When Downtown happened, I was actually living in Paris. I had a very successful career all over Europe, singing in French and German and Italian and English too. And then Tony Hatch came along into my apartment in Paris and presented me with a song which wasn't even finished. It had this title and it had a wonderful tune. It wasn't quite finished, and I said, "That's great. Finish it and let's do it." And we recorded it a couple of weeks later in London, where most of those songs afterwards, like Subway and Couldn't Live Without Your Love, and all of those songs were recorded pretty well. All of them were recorded in London in the same studio where we recorded Downtown.
Working with Tony Hatch had to be a great pleasure for you. I mean, it seems like the collaboration between both of you was magic.
Oh yes, definitely. I had known Tony before he came to me with Downtown. We had worked in the studio on my French recordings, and he was a sort of junior producer at High Records in London, and I liked him. We got on well together. I mean, he was very efficient and all that kind of thing, but I knew there was something else there. But it wasn't until he played me Downtown on my piano in Paris that I realized, oh yes, this is great. And then when we got into the studio and I heard the orchestra and those first two fantastic bars or measures, as you say in America, on the piano, and then this explosion of orchestra, that's when I thought, my God, this guy's got something. And he didn't just write the songs, but he orchestrated them and produced them. So, it was a very important moment for both of us, I think.
And it turned out to be one of the most important moments for me. Is the first time I ever heard that song, I was a young boy, and I think it was the most influential song in me growing up. It was one of the greatest songs ever. Oh yeah, Petula. It's been my favorite song ever since I was like 5 years old, and I want to thank you for recording it because it's been so important to me.
Well, that's nice to hear. There've been a lot of great songs since, of course, but Downtown seems to have a life of its own. I still sing it obviously on stage, and I recorded it. I re-recorded it recently on my new album, new English album. I don't know if you've heard it, but it's even when you slow it down in tempo and give it a different feeling, it's still a great song. Yeah, it is a great song.
Now, you recorded it in a number of different languages, too, right?
Oh, yes. Sort of back then in the 60s, you sort of had to do your songs in different languages. If you wanted to have a hit in Italian, you'd have to record Downtown in Italian, which I did. It was called Ciao Ciao, would you believe? And I recorded it in German and in French. But funnily enough, now, when I sing it here in France, because I'm talking to you from Switzerland, the French like to hear it in English. And it is actually better in English than in any of the other languages.
I've actually, on my radio program, have played it in German before, and I no matter what language you play it in, it's still a great song. As many of your other songs are great as well. My Love, Don't Sleep in the Subway, and I Know a Place. It goes on and on. The list is endless.
Yes, he wrote some fantastic things for me, and it became so easy too. I mean, we would go into the studio, and I knew that I had a great song and that he would produce it beautifully. So it was was very easy, you know. It's not always easy making a record. You know, when you're really happy with the song and the producer and the environment, it takes a lot of things to make a good record.
Absolutely, it does. But most of all, it takes a great singer. And I want to mention a fact, Petula, here that in 1964, you wrote the soundtrack for a French film called Daggers Drawn. Tell me a little bit about that. And how many soundtracks did you write?
Oh, where did you get hold of that information?
Well, I did some research, and I hope my research is correct.
No, you're absolutely correct, yes. But, I mean, it's not one of the best things I've ever done, but, you know, I was living in Paris at the time, and they wanted me to write the music for this, and I thought, well, you know, why not? It sounds easy to me. Of course, it's not as easy as all that, actually, but I did it, and, yes, it's there.
No, I think it's very good, actually. It's very good.
Well, thank you.
Did you enjoy that role, like writing and producing stuff like that? I mean, was that something that you kind of did, like, you know, this isn't too bad, I'll do this, or was it like just a matter of fact thing?
It was somewhere between the two, I think, Ray. I didn't think that I was equipped to do it, but they insisted on me doing it. Some of it was quite fun. You know, I actually write quite a lot now. I write a lot more now than I was doing then, and I enjoy the whole process of writing. It's almost as much fun as singing. And, you know, I find, too, that when I write my own songs, I'm able to express myself a little better. I'm able to say things that only I can say or that only I can feel.
Right.
Other writers may not find that, you know.
Well, it's kind of based on your experience because you've sang many different songs and you've done a lot of things, so that's probably a little more natural now for you.
Yes, I think so, and I think I've got more confidence in my own writing now. So that's something that I enjoy. I'm not a kind of, I don't look on myself as a songwriter. I'm a sometimes songwriter, you know. If an idea comes into my head and I'm near a piano, it'll just happen. But I can't sort of wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to write a song today. It doesn't work like that.
No, it just kind of comes out naturally.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on the 1968 TV special you did with Harry Belafonte. What was that like?
Well, you know, Ray, we you know, it was for NBC, and it was my own special, and they said, who would you like to have as your guest? And I thought about it, and I said, well, you know, I'd love to have Harry Belafonte. I enjoyed him for many years, you know, as a fan, and he accepted, and I was delighted and quite flattered, and we started rehearsing together and had a fantastic time. We really enjoyed spending time together, not just singing, but having fun and hanging out. And so by the time we came to taping the show, you know, we were very, very much at ease with each other. And we were singing a duet, one that I co-wrote called Path of Glory, which was a kind of anti-war song, you know. And we both felt quite strongly about it. And during the performance of this song, I touched Harry's arm, which was, you know, not much of a big deal, but, you know, I just felt. And little did we know that the sponsor was in the sponsor's box up in the control room, and he hit the ceiling. And, you know, you know.
Yeah, you can't have that.
We can't have that. You know, we can't have our star touching a man's arm. You know, I mean, it seems ridiculous now, but it really was a big deal at the moment. And we did a couple of other takes with, you know, in a very different kind of way, which was artistically quite good, but we weren't actually standing next to each other. And, you know, obviously the sponsor was happier with that. But
understandable, yeah.
we decided, that's to say my husband and I decided that they were not going to have their way. You know, we were going to put this out the way we wanted it to be. So we had to go down to the control room down in the basement at NBC and tell this poor engineer to erase the other takes. And I mean, he was horror-struck. He said, I can't do that. We have to have something just in case something goes wrong, so we have another take. And my lawyer was with us, and he said, this is an order. You erase those other takes.
Wow.
And that's how it was.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
We didn't think it was a big deal, but it hit the press, and it turned into a big deal.
That's I'm very proud of you. I think that's you got to do it your way.
Absolutely.
Petula, I also noticed that you were the subject of, on the show, This Is Your Life, you were the subject 3 different times. This is quite amazing. I think you're the only person ever to be on This Is Your Life 3 different times.
Well, I tell you, it was horrifying because, the first time it's always a surprise. You know how they do this show. They plan the whole show without you knowing anything about it, and they do it very well. This was the BBC, and then the second time, I thought, well, that's a bit strange, and I was standing next to somebody who was also very well known, so I thought it was going to be him, but it was me. Wow. And the third time was I had just finished a performance in a really hard, grueling week in a show called Sunset Boulevard. And it was Saturday night, and I thought, oh, great, I'm going to have a nice glass of beer when I get back to my dressing room, and then I'm going to have a day off. And, whoa, there it was again. Suddenly, Petula Clark, This Is Your Life. And it was in front of the audience, and I actually broke down, and I thought, I can't face this. And I somehow got through it, but it's actually quite an emotional thing to happen, and for it to happen to you 3 times is weird.
Oh, it is a little odd, but it's the most of anybody. And I wanted to ask you, are you going to bring your one-woman show to the U.S.?
Well, I've done it a few times in the U.S., but not for quite a while. I did a tour of the UK last year and Australia last year, and it's there, and the show is there, and I would love to bring it to America, but I guess I have to wait till somebody asks me.
I'd love to see it, because I would love to meet you in person, because you're one of the greatest legends of all time in the recording history.
Well, that's very, very flattering. Thank you. How are things in Cleveland these days?
Things are well. Things are very well. Good. And, a friend of mine said she saw you in Blood Brothers, and you were fantastic.
Oh, I remember Cleveland very well. I had many happy times in Cleveland.
Well, that's great to hear. And, believe me, we appreciate all you've done.
Right. I think I have to go, actually, Ray.
Okay. Listen, is it okay if I put this on YouTube, this interview?
Oh, I suppose so. Yes. Why not?
Okay. Thank you for your time, Petula.
Okay, Ray, and thanks for all your encouragement.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.